Well, I'm sure she'll cover it, or she'll at least cover what she honored. But we got a break on the other part. Here. Hey.
Hello, everyone. Good evening.
Good evening.
Okay. Okay. I think it's time now. 6 p.m. EST. How are you guys all doing? Hope you are great. Good to have you around again. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Good. Great. All right. So welcome back, and thank you for joining. Especially those that are still at work. I know some of you are trying to balance in between work and some of you might also be in transit. So if you're driving, just drive safe, and also take care of yourself because the weather is really hot, cold right now. So welcome back. So without further ado, we'll be starting our topic again. This is week 2 of our course, HRM 5006 RDL, the online version. Okay, so last week we discussed about the introductory part of occupational health and safety. So let us have a little recap of that before we'll move to this topic. Um, let's hear from. I think almost everybody here was there last week. Anybody not here last week? Okay, so I believe everybody here online is was present last week. Okay, so Crystal, wait. Okay, I thought you were
That's right.
raising up your hand. Pardon me?
Oh, sorry. This is my first week here.
Oh, it's your first week. Okay, Crystal. Okay, congratulations. Nice to have you around. You're welcome. Officially, my name is Dr. Sam Bodrin, and I am your professor for this course. So it's great to have you around. So do you want to tell us maybe a couple of things about yourself, your hobbies, where you studying from? Are you in Ontario? And perhaps one or two expectations from this course.
Um, I'm studying from Ontario. I just graduated from Guelph Humber in December 2024. I've been working in nonprofit for 24 years in the Toronto area, and I'm looking to take an organizational perspective um,
Mm,
lens to my profession, as well as I'm waiting for an MSW application to see if that goes through. And in the interim, I'm doing this program, and I'm looking forward to the organizational perspective, because I don't have that. I'm
mm,
not sure takeaways I'm expecting, but I'm really looking forward to the course.
Okay, nice to meet you once again, Crystal. And I'm very, very without any iota of doubt that, of course, you're going to get a lot of, experiences, knowledge sharing here. We have a lot of people with industry experience, and of course, we're also looking forward to hearing you share your experience in the non-profit organization as well. So, welcome on board. So without further ado, we'll move to what we discussed last week. Michael, do you have your notes with you? You want to share something with us about what we discussed last week? Just a little recap so that everybody can get something, just like a reminder.
The three E's. The three E's are education, enforcement, and I looked at this earlier and I said, "Oh, I should remember this." And I'm trying to remember.
Please check your phone, check your notes. You're free to check your notes. That's fine. Engineering, education, and
enforcement. Engineering was the one I forgot.
yes,
and you know why?
enforcement.
I think of an engineer, so I don't
Okay.
think of, I don't like it. It's not. I don't connect engineer with OHS. So yeah, but that's right.
Okay. Okay. That's cool. Thank you very much, Michael, for that contribution. So the three E's, in OHS. So we also want to say something. Let's see. Any hands up? Gagandi, we have uh, okay, Vanessa. Vanessa, you have the floor.
So we also discussed the three principal rights of workers. So the right to refuse dangerous work without penalty,
Mm-hmm.
the right to
All right.
participate in identifying and correcting health and safety problems, and the third one is
Mm-hmm.
the right to know about hazards in the workplace.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you so much, Vanessa. All right. So we also want to say something. Just okay, Francisco.
It was
Francisco, you
also
have the floor.
it was also discussed like the different stakeholders that are affected by OHS. There's the employers, the employees, organizations, and committees.
Right, right. Excellent. Thank you so much. Different stakeholders we have. I know HS. Okay. So today, please can you please meet your speaker, Sandra? Yeah, I hear the voice of little one. Don't worry, we recognize you, and we're glad to have you in our class. Um, so we're going to be looking at the legislative framework of in OHS, the legislative framework. That's chapter 2 of our textbook. However, before that's okay, Sandra, it's fine there. Um, it's okay. Um, there are two links that are shared on Blackboard. There's one link that I would like us to watch. The Western Mind Explosion and overview, the women's introduction and overview. The Western Mind Explosion, we discussed a little bit about that last week, and the mind explosion, it's quite. The video is not really, it's not short, it's about 23 minutes. So I'll allow you to go watch that on your own. But there's another one, Introduction to WHMIS. Okay, some people will say WHMIS or WHMIS. So it's about 3 or 4 minutes. I'll just play the video, then we'll come back and continue with the topic. Let me see if I can share the video here. Okay, can you see the video and what about the audio?
Not yet. Or
I could see it, but no audio.
No audio. Okay. Hold on. Let me share.
Commonly referred to as
How about
WHMIS,
now?
first came into effect on October 31st, 1988. It was
Can you hear the audio? Can you
yes.
see the video and
We're good
audio?
now.
Okay, good. All right. Thank you. Let me start from the beginning.
the Workplace Hazardous Materials Information System, commonly referred to as WHMIS, first came into effect on October 31st, 1988. It was created to address the rights of Canadian workers to know about health and safety hazards associated with hazardous products they use or may come in contact with in the workplace. In February 2015, Canada aligned WHMIS with the Globally Harmonized System of Classification and Labeling of Chemicals, GHS. GHS was developed as an international initiative to bring global standardization to chemical hazard classification and communication. You've probably heard the term WHMIS 2015 at some point. This update to WHMIS was the reason that the term was used for several years after 2015. In December 2022, WHMIS was once again updated to align with newer revisions of the GHS. For most workplaces, the most notable impact of the change from WHMIS 2015 to the amended WHMIS is the adoption of a new physical hazard class, chemicals under pressure, the adoption of a non-flammable aerosols hazard category, and the new subcategories for flammable gases. What is WHMIS? Understanding and recognizing hazardous materials is vital for anyone working in an environment with these substances. That's where WHMIS comes in. The Workplace Hazardous Materials Information System, or WHMIS, is a comprehensive system for providing information about hazardous materials used in the workplace. WHMIS is critical for several reasons. First, it's about your safety and the safety of your colleagues. It equips you with the knowledge to handle hazardous products safely, reducing the risk of incidents and injuries. It also informs you about the potential health effects of these products, such as whether a substance might cause skin irritation, breathing problems, or more severe health issues. Second, WHMIS promotes a more effective response to workplace emergencies involving hazardous products. When everyone is familiar with WHMIS, workers can respond swiftly and accurately to incidents, limiting harm and potential damage. Third, knowing about WHMIS is not just a good idea, it's the law. In Canada, workplaces are legally required to provide WHMIS training to all employees who are exposed or likely to be exposed to a hazardous product at work. WHMIS is more than just a set of symbols on a container. It's a vital part of maintaining a safe and healthy workplace, protecting workers from potential hazards, and responding effectively when things go wrong. So whether you're a new employee or someone with years of experience, understanding and following WHMIS guidelines should always be a priority. Provincial legislation. Provincial WHMIS legislation, while aligned with federal laws, emphasizes the responsibilities of employers. These provincial regulations dictate how hazardous materials should be handled, used, and stored within workplaces. They also stipulate that employers must provide WHMIS training to their employees, ensuring they have the knowledge necessary to work safely with or around hazardous products. Exemptions. While WHMIS covers a wide range of hazardous products, it's important to note that some products are excluded from its scope. For example, consumer products used for personal, family, or household purposes are excluded. These products, typically sold at retail locations, are regulated separately under the Canada Consumer Product Safety Act. Additional exclusions include explosives, cosmetics, devices, drugs and food, pest control products, wood and wood products, nuclear substances, hazardous waste, tobacco and tobacco products, and manufactured articles. Just because a product is excluded from WHMIS does not mean it's safe. It simply means that it's regulated under a different set of rules. Employers are still responsible for educating and training employees about their potential health effects, safe handling practices, and appropriate storage methods if used or present in the workplace. Remember, you should always handle products, whether covered by WHMIS or not, with caution and respect for their potential hazards.
Okay. Welcome back. So how was the video? Did you learn anything? Okay. All right. So let me share the content we're going to be looking at today with you. All right. So please, in case you can't hear me, always feel free to interrupt and let me know if you are having problem with video or audio. And I believe everybody can see my screen. I'm just sharing the document chapter 2 with you, legislative framework. Please confirm if you can see that, Michael and the rest.
Yes.
Okay, excellent. So the learning objectives for this chapter of our textbook, and I believe if you don't have a textbook, please, you can always borrow from the library of the school, or you can, if you can afford it, you can also buy. You should be able to describe the structure and role of Joint Health and Safety Committee, the JHSC. I also discuss WHMIS, WHMIS 2015 as applied to the right to know about chemical hazards in the workplace. We just watched a video of WHMIS. I explained how occupational health and safety fit into the criminal code, especially for those of us that were here last week. We discussed about Westray law and what happened in 1992 at the Westray mine explosion. Express how environmental and transportation of dangerous goods legislation interacts with occupational health and safety concerns. Okay, so the first part, we're going to be looking at the opening vignettes, creative sentences of occupational health and safety violations. Now, from what we discussed last week about Westray law, organization and people have been convicted of occupational health and safety violations pay fines to government. There is this link I also shared on Blackboard. It's talking about Westray bills, Bill C45. Everything about Westray law is there, including different cases. The last portion of how has anyone been charged. I don't know whether it was in this class that somebody asked me if anyone that has been charged on criminal offenses under Occupational Health and Safety Act. So, and I said yes. So you can read the last part. Has anyone been charged? We have different examples, and these are recent examples, including the one that happened just last year in April 19, 2024 at Newmarket in Ontario. Of a worker who was killed after the ground around him collapsed while digging a ditch in a residential construction site. So the construction site supervisor was charged. The manager was charged with criminal code, the one count of criminal negligence, causing the death of the construction worker. So under Occupational Health and Safety Act, company can be charged. Even supervisors and managers can be charged with criminal negligence if the accident leads to severe injury or death of a worker. So with huge fine for individual You can be charged up to 50 to 100,000 and even 7 jail term. And for organizations, about starting from $1.5 million, depending on the severity of the you know the accident. So some jurisdictions also allow for creative sentences in addition to in lieu of fine. So what do we call creative sentences? Where apart from getting fined or jail term, the company or the executive of the company can be asked to make public apology or presentation to the public, addressing the public of their criminal negligence and their commitment to ensuring that there will be health and safety will be of paramount to the organization going forward. So, in addition to the fine, a Nova Scotia company found guilty of occupational health and safety violation was required to make public presentation. That's part of creative sentences. Consider other type of positive creative sentencing options. Now, some of the key terms under occupational health and safety. The first one is the Act. So when we refer to the Act, basically we are talking about the legislation guiding occupational health and safety within a jurisdiction. So in Canada, we have the federal law, we have provincial law, we also have territorial laws. Okay, so that constitutes occupational health and safety. So we're going to talk about each of those provinces and territories and the type of OHS law that is related. So we have regulations which explain the general intent of the act and how it will be applied in a specific circumstance or circumstances. And we have guidelines and policies. So it's another keyword. So guidelines and policies are not actually legislation, but they are specific rules, most times within a company or within a firm that that guides, how work is being done around OHS, and they are enforceable. They are not legally enforceable, but within the organization, workers are required to adhere strictly to the rules and policies. So, an example of guidelines and policies could include policies and procedures, standard operating, procedure (SOP). Then we have standards and codes, which provide practical guidance on the implementation of occupational health and safety practices, which are often established by agencies. For instance, we have the Canada Safety Acts and ILO. ILO is International Labour Organization. It is an arm of the United Nations that seeks to employment issues, labor relations issues globally. So let's talk about the scope of occupational health and safety legislation. So for all laws, all legislation, whether it's federal, whether it's state, they must have these elements. These following elements are characteristics of Occupational Health and Safety Act. The first one is the act. So that means has it must be regarded as an act empowered by either statute or prime minister accent. It must be regarded as a law, and there must be power of enforcement. There must be an agency of the government or a body that is saddled with the power to enforce the act. So, for instance, in Ontario, we have Occupational Health and Safety Act, and the Ministry of Labor. There's a department under the Ministry of Labor as Immigration Skill Development in Ontario that has the responsibility to enforce the acts. Then any occupational health and safety legislation must mention workers' rights. All right, rights. Last week, we discussed some of these rights: right to know, right to refuse, right to participate. So, Occupational Health and Safety Act must talk especially right to refuse unsafe work and protection of workers from reprisal. So reprisal means witch hunting. So under our act, we have protection, whistleblower protection. So that means if you report your worker, your employer for not adhering strictly to the legislation, you have all the protection from the government, um, from being witch hunted or from being fired, or by your employer. So the protection is very important, because it's part of your right to participate. So if you're reporting your employer for not doing the right thing, the employer cannot, you know, go against you by firing you for doing the right thing. So you also have duties and responsibility assigned to employers and all that. So we're going to be looking at some of these responsibilities and details I'll be going to. So these are just as the scope of any occupational health and safety legislation, whether in at the federal level or at provincial level or territorial level. So I will pause a little and ask if there's any question so far on what we discussed. Any question? So I want to consider that everybody's okay with that. So let's just continue if there's no question. Okay, so here we have provinces across Canada. The occupational health and safety legislation that is applicable in those at the provincial level and or the territorial level, and the government agencies that are responsible for the act and enforcement. So, for instance, we have at the federal level, we have the Canada Labour Code, which is the Canadian labor employment or employment law for the federal government workers working for federal agencies and crown corporations. We also have regulations under the Part 2. We have Workplace Safety Labor Program, Employment and Social Development Canada, and Government of Canada. So for Alberta, we have Occupational Health and Safety Act, and of course, Occupational Health and Safety Act Alberta Labor is in charge of enforcement. For British Columbia, we have Workers' Compensation Act and Occupational Health and Safety Regulation being enforced by WorkSafe BC. So we have other ones. I'll just jump straight to Ontario, which is our province. Occupational Health and Safety Act, that's our main OHS legislation here, by the Ministry of Labor, Occupational Health and Safety branch under the Ministry of Labor. So, and in charge of enforcement. And we have other provinces also that are also using the same act with us, like Nova Scotia. We have Prince Edward Island using the same. We have Yukon Territory. And of course, Alberta is also using the same Occupational Health and Safety Act. All right, so we have New Brunswick using the same thing. Almost about 5 or 6 other provinces are also using the same legislation as us. So let's talk about the Act, Occupational Health and Safety Act. So it sets the minimum requirement of occupational health and safety within each jurisdiction. So what does it mean? The law will always set minimum, like minimum standard, okay, that every organization, every firm must adhere to strictly. So just like, for instance, we have minimum wage. So what's our minimum wage in Ontario? What's our minimum wage in Ontario? Anyone?
17.25.
Exactly. So now, so it means that no employer is expected to pay anybody less than 17.25, right? So here, same way, under occupational health and safety, practices. Once a standard has been set, that is the minimum, meaning no employer can go below the minimum requirement of the law, but you can, of course, raise the standard, do more than what the law requires, but you can't do below. So that is one of the standards. The law, the act, also set boundaries for its applications, noting any exclusions. So the boundaries, the do's, the don'ts, including responsibilities, and where there are exclusions, grounds for exclusions must be, well um, presented or well articulated under the Act. Also, outline mandatory component of occupational health and safety programming within the jurisdiction, and also articulate duties for major stakeholders. Some of the major stakeholders we've already mentioned last week, so we're going to also look at them. Are the employer, the employee, the supervisors, the joint health and safety committee, the labor, the community, and so on and so forth. So let's talk about some of the stakeholders' duties and responsibilities. So the first one is employer. So the general responsibility of an employer comes under due diligence, where employer is expected to provide and ensure a safe work environment for everyone within the establishment. So the general duty provision of an employer includes primary duty directly articulated under the Occupational Health and Safety Act, which across Canada have the general duty provision requiring employer to take every reasonable precaution to ensure employee safety. So we also have the prescribed duty, of course, which is a duty to be undertaken because of health and safety regulations. All of these are also covered under the due diligence, responsibility of an employer. So, and apart from that, employer must have reports, I think is also mentioned here, the duties and responsibility of employer. So employer must take reasonable precautions to ensure employee safety, appoint a competent supervisor to ensure occupational health and safety is adhered by everyone working within the establishment, provide information in the medical emergency, where there's accident or incident, there must be a report, all right, detailed report of the emergency, who was involved, when, what time, how did it happen, what was the root cause of the accident. And all of this must be submitted to the Workers' Compensation Board, to the Ministry of Labor, and of course, to the Joint Health and Safety Committee. They must have also a report about the incident or accident. So inform supervisors and workers of possible hazards through different trainings, orientation about occupational health and safety. Most times, employer also paid for training, right, including refresher courses, fire, fire drills, and all the health and safety trainings within the organization. Post the Occupational Health and Safety Act in the workplace. So there are posters, especially in I know very sure in Ontario, that the Ministry of Labor used to send posters. There are downloadable posters on the website that employers are expected to print out and post, in different places within the organization, so that people can read about the acts, their rights, WHMIS, and things that are related to occupational health and safety, acts within the workplace. So, employer must also prepare and maintain health and safety policies and renew annually. So, every company must have policies and procedures, standard operating procedure on health and safety practices within the organization, including um, how to adhere strictly to PPE, personal protective equipment. So the employer is also saddled with the responsibility of preparing policies regarding workplace violence and harassment. So there's a part of occupational health and safety that talks about workplace harassment, workplace violence, how to report harassment, how to investigate harassment, and the responsibility of employers and managers on how to prevent harassment in the workplace. Okay, so let's go to contractors. So the duty and responsibilities of contractors are similar to that of employers as well, because most contractors are also they are independent contractors. They also employ people working for them, either as independent subcontractors or as direct employees. So most of their responsibility are the same, as outlined under the responsibilities of employers. So they have to oversee the construction of a project and is ultimately responsible for the health and safety of those involved, all the workers involved working under their contract. The third one is supervisors.
Dr. Samuel,
Um,
I have a question.
okay,
In relation to the responsibility of the employer and the contractor, because obviously the contractor is hired by the employer to do a particular
okay.
thing, right? In terms of the contractor, I know it's an organization, but is there any liability between the employer and the contractor?
So if you can expatiate on or
Yeah,
give an
so
example of a situation. So um,
uh,
the kind of
let's.
the
Mhm.
kind of accident or incident will determine who should be held liable. So maybe you want to give an
Okay,
example or an
sure.
insight.
So we can do that. So let's say the contracting company is contracted to do, let's say, electrical work, right?
Okay.
So they contracted to do electrical work, which means that there's already an established building, there's a structure.
Okay.
And then folks are doing the work that they're doing, and let's say the ceiling of the structure is not stable, right? And that
Okay.
happens to fall on the contracted employee or the employer of the contractor. Who then is
Okay.
liable in that instance because the
So
structure is not the responsibility of contractor?
so the worker is working for the contractor, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So the contractor is directly responsible for the liability. However, the contract, we also have to take note of whatever is happening in the contract, because of course um it is within the establishment of the employer. So
Hmm.
the direct liability goes to the contractor.
Okay.
However, the employer is also indirectly responsible. So couple of things at that point. We'll look at the content or the details of the contract.
Hmm.
There must be a part that mentioned liability when it comes to um, direct liability, indirect liability. At what point will the employer comes in? But prima facie, in the true face of it, under the law, the contractor is directly responsible for any liability that occurs
Hmm.
under to any of their worker who is working directly for them, either
Okay.
their own establishment or wherever they're working.
Okay. So I guess that's the
Yeah,
difference between an employment liability and a business liability, because the employer would
exactly.
be pretty much a service user. So that's more of a
Yeah,
business contract as opposed to
exactly.
the employer and the contractor, which is an employment contract.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. And the kind of contract that guides direct employee and people I consider um, independent contractor is different. So there's what we
Hmm.
call contract of employment and contract for employment
Right.
under employment law. I don't want to go into employment and law details right now, but one is employee directly working under employer, and the other one is a contractor or a subcontractor working under a major contractor.
Mhm.
But whatever it is, the contractor is directly responsible
Gotcha.
Can I
based
follow up?
on what. Yeah,
Can I
Michael,
follow
you
up
want to?
that? With McCarson's question, the scenario was that the roof of the structure fell and the contractor's employees were hurt, and you said, well, he's responsible. So then,
Oh, okay. So now, if at that point, if we have mixed of our contractors, workers, and employees also involved in the accident, of course, we have to split it. So the employer will take care of the employees.
Mhm.
Then, of course, what is the root cause of the accident? The root cause of the accident is that unstable ceiling, right?
That's right.
If I'm, yeah, so that means employer's structure wasn't good enough. Now, we also need to ask our question, was there no inspection before they started the contract? Because at that
Mm.
point, yes, so that is where negligence also comes into play. So you call yourself a professional before you start the work, you need to establish where you're working, do some survey, professional, evaluation of the structure before you start it. So to me, based on my understanding, I think it's going to be split. They are going to split it, though the contractor may have some legal excuses to claim some liability from the employer, all right, if he decide to take it legally. But of course, he cannot also 100% claim alibi from industrial negligence for not taking care, note of the risk, that are associated with the contract
so the
during the
reason
evaluation
the reason
level.
why I asked this is
Mm,
it's well, I mean, it's commonplace in the construction industry, housing, whatever, that
okay.
you have an owner or the employer who hires a general contractor,
Yeah.
and then if he, let alone him having direct employees, he hires other contractors who have employees or work for themselves. They go on site, and
Mm,
of course, the general at some point they have to keep the inspections up. But you hire me, I'm an electrician, and I'm just there to I'm contracted to do a job. I can't inspect the whole building to make sure you're in the third phase of the building. So there's a lot of moving parts. I mean, ultimately, in a case like that, I don't know the law here well enough, but I would suspect that there's definitely due diligence on me as a self-employed contracting electrician. But that, as you go higher from me to the general contractor to the owner of the building or the employer, there has to be more responsibility to ensure the overall safety, because or otherwise nothing, it would be too much of a legal gotcha, catch 22
yeah.
all the time.
Mm.
Is that making
So
sense? Am I
it does.
asking the right question?
You are absolutely. So you are absolutely. And if you remember last week, we talked about workers' compensation, and the 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 contractor, the major contractor, must always have workers' compensation insurance. If you have worker or subcontractors more than 20, who are working directly under your contract, you must have workers' compensation to cover liability, coming from any of those uh, contracts or from any of those sites. So that's a point that I'm going to be looking at it from, so that even if the subcontractor doesn't have any insurance, the major contractor should, to cover liability of such whenever it happens. Michael,
No, thanks.
I hope I was spoken. Are you comfortable with that? Okay, so the supervisor, just like I was saying, They are in charge of the workplace. These guys are like police. They have the authority to coach workers, ensure that workers are doing the right thing. They also monitor the general duties within the workplace, ensuring that health and safety of the workers is ensured. They supervise, they coach, they ensure workers adhere by wearing their personal protective equipment at all times, their safety equipment, their devices, their clothing, and they always advise workers of possible hazards on the job. They are also responsible to take action whenever any any of their workers report hazards. Remember we talked about the meaning of hazard last week. Anything that has the potential causing harm or negative health issues, hazards. So supervisors are they must be in charge of all of these responsibilities. All right, still on duties of supervisors. Okay, just move to workers now. So the workers or employees, they have the duty of taking responsible, reasonable precaution to ensure their own safety and the safety of fellow workers at work. They must always comply, with the Occupational Health and Safety Acts, the regulation and the policies within the organization or the firm. Uh, Properly use safety equipment provided for them and report hazards such as defective equipment to supervisor. Now, I just want to pause here and ask you, if somebody is reporting hazard in the workplace, what type of rights is the worker exercising based on the workers' right we mentioned last week, we discussed last week? Reporting of hazards under what right?
Well, the
Can you
right,
hear me?
to refuse work if they
Sorry?
if the right to refuse doing the work.
Right to refuse? Is that
Yeah,
okay? Any other person? Anyone else?
The
What
right
kind
to
of right is that?
participate.
Exactly. It's right to participate. Remember, we said something that, the common thing, um, the common slogan, the TTC's subway, if you see something, say something. So when you're reporting hazard in a workplace, you are participating, all right, by reporting the hazard to your supervisor. Then report any contraventions of the act or regulation. So you see somebody going against the act, or you see somebody not adhering to the policy of occupational health and safety, you have to report, even if it means that your employer is not doing the right thing and you have complained over time and your employer is not ready to listen. You can report. I know there is a way you can file it under the Ministry of Labor, and of course they're going to investigate and take action, the necessary action. Now the fourth stakeholder we have here is the Joint Health and Safety Committee, the JHSC. This JHSC, they are required by the law. So I'm just also going to give you an example. If your company has employees, 20 employees and above, you must have a joint health and safety committee. So, and under the law, the provision is that the joint health and safety committee must have at least four members, two representing employer, the other two representing the employees or the labor, the organized labor. Now, the JHSA has a certificate, all right, or a license, which is required that members of the committee must, have. So under this provision, we have two members representing the employer and the other one representing the employees. One out of each side, on each side must be at least licensed, must be a licensed JHSC practitioner. So the committee helps to enact internal responsibility systems, also provide non-adversarial atmosphere in which labor and management can work together to create a healthier workplace. So the act also mentioned how to form the committee, the composition, the training, the certification requirements, which I just mentioned. So the major duty of Joint Health and Safety Committee includes hazard recognition, risk assessment, record keeping of incident and accident, and responding to employee concerns. They also investigate work refusals. So whenever employee refuse work, they go there and investigate if the work that has been refused is harmful or not. So they also help in accident investigation and also play some other advisory role um, concerning health and safety within an organization. Now, the question might want to ask me is, what if my company has less than 20 employees? So if you have less than 20 employees, you are required to have minimum of one health and safety representative, which must be certified, must be a member of the JHSC, certified JHSC practitioner. So if your company has less than 20 employees. So do you have any question regarding Joint Health and Safety Committee? So under section 5 of the Occupational Health and Safety Act, you will see the duties and responsibility of Joint Health and Safety Committee. Do we have any question on this? Okay. So Joint Health and Safety Committee, if you have 20 or more employees, you're supposed to have it across different provinces that's mentioned here. Only Newfoundland and Saskatchewan are required that you have 10 or more employees. Even in Quebec, you must have 20 or more. So let's talk a bit about work refusal. So it's one of the rights of workers, right to refuse unsafe or harmful work. So most of the Occupational Health and Safety Act across different provinces and territories mention the work refusal. So that means the worker has the right to refuse unsafe work without fear of reprisal. So that means you can refuse work, tax if they have a reasonable cause to believe that the action will bring harm to them or to other workers. And of course, there are procedures or forms to fill, when refusing work, and there are also procedures that's expected of the employer to follow in investigating the work is actually harmful or not, including the investigation alongside the JHSC, the labor union, if there's any, or the health and safety representative of the organization. So it is a fundamental right of workers across all um, all our Occupational Health and Safety Act in Canada. So still on workers' refusal, there are limits or exclusions to that right. So worker, of course, you have the right to refuse if it's under a normal condition. You cannot refuse, and of course, the refusal places another's life in jeopardy. You can refuse it. But however, in some jobs, you cannot refuse your work if your work already comes with risk. For instance, if you're a police officer or you are enrolled into the army and you are asked to go to war front as a military man, So you can't refuse that kind of work because, of course, it comes with risk, high risk. Or if you are a frontliner, like a medical doctor, a nurse, you will always, at all time, prevent people's lives. So in case there's accidents, you can be called at any time to save life, and you will see a lot of things, right? You will see a lot of blood, wound all the time. So those kind of work, the right to refuse right is limited. It's limited. These are exclusions under work refusal. So there's also stop work provision, which can be pronounced most times by the inspectors from the Ministry of Labor. So some jurisdictions have a provision to stop work in dangerous circumstances. Excuse me. So, for instance, under Ontario legislation, it describes dangerous circumstances as follows. A provision of the Act or regulations is being contravened. So, I'm going to explain all of this with examples. Contravention presents a danger or hazard to a worker, or danger or hazard in such that any delay in controlling it may seriously endanger a worker. So, um, there could be work stoppage if, what, for instance, the hazard can claim lives. So let's say, for instance, where there's spillage of propane or inflammable gas. So the Ministry of Labor or any occupational health and safety agents can stop work and, of course, seal up the production line or even the entire organization if it can lead to severe accidents. So depending on the kind of hazard that is observed, so they can decide that, okay, yeah, this production line should be stopped if the process is unhealthy, or if they are not facing, or they are not following the health and safety procedure, or the entire organization if need be. So it has to be, based on the severity of the hazard if it happens. So that can lead to work stoppage. So I have examples, different examples. I think even in a restaurant, I've seen a restaurant that was sealed. Before, there was a complaint by some of their customers. So we have inspectors that went there, checked their kitchen, the back end, and they discovered that the process, their food processing procedures are unhealthy, and the food is not really good enough for consumption, for public consumption. So the inspector, ordered the stoppage of the, cooking, and they sealed off the restaurant. So they asked them to go, do their recertification processes, food handler, certification and all of those things, before they reopened. So if that hazard poses health and safety issues to the public, all right, so they can decide to stop the work, right? So I I hope there's no. Is there any question on this? Stop work provision, or maybe you have experience of a company or establishment that has experienced stop work provision, um, maybe from the ministry or even from the JHSC. You can share it with us. Can you hear me, Michael? Are you still there? Is everybody still there?
Yeah, I have a question then. Okay, so I'm thinking
Okay.
inspectors from the labor board, but what about public health like
Okay.
a public health
Okay.
office. How does
Yeah.
that differ?
Okay. So we're still going to get there where the industrial issue stops, where environment protection takes over. So there is a line between industrial health and safety, the one that concerns environmental protection, the one that concerns consumer protection. So if you listen very well, the video I showed, on WHMIS. So not every chemicals are under industrial WHMIS. Some are for home consumption. So those ones, like the bleach we use at home, they are hazardous materials, all right, but they are not in industrial. We're not using it in industrial quantity. So that responsibility is not under WHMIS. It's not under occupational health and safety. It's under consumer protection. All right. So there are other ones that are under environmental protection. So that deals with especially where people are residing, residential area, spillage of chemicals within residential building. So it is not Ministry of Labor that it's not the affair of the Ministry of Labor. It's going to be the affair of Environmental Protection Agency to ensure that people's lives and properties, are protected. Sometimes we might have intersectional duties where the two ministries are coming together to work, for the health and safety of the public. All right, so we have McCarson. You have your hand first, then Alma, you come after. So McCarson, you have the floor.
Sure. I wanted to look at that intersectionality within the occupational context. For
Okay.
example, you mentioned maybe disinfectants and all of those things that may come under consumer protection, right?
Yeah.
If those things exist in a workplace, would that still not be the responsibility of the employer, which would fall under maybe something like WHMIS, maybe not like the act, but I guess the right to inform in terms of the hazardous properties that may exist
Okay.
whilst using those products?
Okay. So now, for instance, maybe the bathroom cleaner, the cleaning agents that we use. All right, we also use it in our work, places. So the thing is this: the fact that we have some chemicals under consumer protection does not totally exonerate the employer from one not training other people, their workers, on those materials. Okay, so in fact, part of the women's will also cover all of that. They must sensitize people on how to use those chemicals, those materials, and also the ethical use of all of those things. However, if it happens within the industrial sector, maybe at work, of course, it's going to be covered by Occupational Health and Safety Act. If it is at home, then it is consumer protection. So if it happens within the industrial sector or within the industrial establishment, then consumer protection could also be invited in, because the quantity that is involved, or the brand, let's just use that product that is involved, is under their jurisdiction within the industrial sector. Of course, that is where both ministries or the agencies will be working together to ensure that people's lives are safe, and the necessary occupational health and safety procedures are followed at all times. I hope I've answered your question, my cousin. Or
Yeah, you sure did.
okay, Alma. Okay.
Yeah, for sure. I was just gonna give an example of an organization that was temporarily shut down. in
Okay.
2021. So it's called the Rec Room, and it was located in Toronto. And basically, they were temporarily shut down during COVID because they were cited for failing to comply with the required public health measures. So, for example, they weren't checking for any vaccines, which was the requirement at the time. The other thing that they were not wearing the masks, which was also a requirement, and they were not following the 6 feet like social distancing measures. So they were asked to shut down until they were able to comply and like officially follow those rules.
Wow.
Mhm.
Thank you very much for sharing that
No
story.
worries.
It's really, really insightful. So, um, if you have any stories, anything that relate to what we are saying, please feel free to share. And it's all for our learning, and it's all for us to also learn from one another. So, thank you very much, Alma, for sharing that story. Okay, so we continue from stop work provision. Yes, WHMIS. WHMIS, no, this is no introduction at this point because I believe we've all watched the video. So it was founded in 1988 as a legislation to promote the rights to know of workers. Every worker needs to know about hazardous, materials and chemicals they're dealing with. Um, there are three major components. Please note this. Three major components of WHMIS. The first one is label. All right. So label. Every chemicals, every material must carry label to alert workers of the content in the container. All right. If you're dealing with any chemicals, the box or the container must have a label, to alert, to exhibit, oh, this chemical is containing, or this container is containing or is carrying flammables, toxic material, corrosive material, biohazard. So there must be a label, and each of those hazard has been classified into different classes. We have class A, class B, C, D, E, depending on you know the hazard material. Then the second one is material safety data sheet, MSDS. Okay, MSDS. Now I'm going to talk about the change in MSDS. Um, okay, let me even say it right now. So something happened in 2015. We call it the global harmonized system. So where all the countries of the world came together that, hey, fella, we are going to be using the same kind of label, because before 2015, every countries use different labels. All right. So that means if you order a chemical from China, what you're going to see under the label might be different from the kind of label we're using in Canada. So, for instance, maybe our flammable, we use fire, right? A little fire, like a label carrying fire. Maybe in China, they use something else, like maybe a red ball. So we might not really understand what red ball means. So everybody came together and said, hey, you know what? We're going to be using the same kind of hazard classification and the same label. So across the world, they change, from different, national labels to globally harmonized labels. So everywhere in the world now, hazard have been classified, the same classes of hazards and the same type of label. And also, the material safety data sheet was changed to safety data sheet, SDS. So what is safety data sheet? So safety data sheet is like an OHS dictionary. It's a very big book that's talks more about each of the chemicals, the details of the chemical, the content, where it's manufactured, what to do in case there's accident or spillage, the ingredients, and all of everything you need to know about a chemical. So if you see, for instance, a label and you don't really understand more about that kind of material or chemical, the next thing to do is to check the SDS, the safety data sheet, to know more about the products, the potential hazards, the ingredients, how to keep it, safe handling, the procedure of keeping it safe, and what to do in case there's any accident involving such that material or chemical. So most establishments, most factories should have safety data sheet, in their factory. So any worker that doesn't understand, or you need to check more about a chemical or a label, you just go straight to the SDS and check, the details about the chemical. Then the third one, the third component under women's is employee training. So it is necessary that every worker dealing with chemicals, every worker, in fact, within the organization should be trained on women's. They should know, it's part of their right to know, what to do for following health and safety procedures, wearing PPE at all times, how to keep themselves safe, how to keep their, the other workers who are also working alongside safe. So the three components under women's includes: one, label; two, safety data sheet, material safety data sheet, which now is safety data sheet since 2015, and three, employee training. So those are the three components in case you find something like that in your exam. So the components, women's components, the 3 minute women's components are label, SDS, and employee training. Do you have any question on this? So still under women's, we have substantial changes to women's legislation. I think I've also mentioned this. The introduction of new classes of chemicals and new requirements for labels, the safety data sheet, which was formerly known as material safety data sheet. So every country now uses the same label. All right. WHMIS in 2015 incorporates elements of globally harmonized system, the GHS, for classification and labeling of chemicals. I've mentioned that earlier, where every country now came together to use the same type of label, same classes of hazards, and change of material safety data sheets. They changed it to safety data sheet. They also introduced new classes of chemicals into the classes of chemicals as it. All right. So the GHS, the globally harmonized system, is an international standard for the classification and labeling of chemicals being adopted by countries around the world. So the GHS system element reflected in WHMIS 2015 is global trade and business interaction. So the GHS help everyone to be able to interact, buy from other countries. So what you're buying, you already know the type of hazards that is coming with the chemical. So it makes global transaction easy across different territories, international trade, buying and selling of materials across, different countries. Okay, workplace hazardous material information system still on women's. So this is just a picture from the textbook. Now let's talk about corporate liability for occupational health and safety under criminal code. A bit of this was mentioned last week, the Bill C-45, the Westray Law, all right, or Bill C-45. The link to Bill C-45 and what you need to know was it's also on your it's also on your Blackboard, so you can read more about that. I shared a link so you can read that on your own. But the summary of it is that part of the occupational health and safety has been criminalized, with the establishment of the Bill C-45, which was passed in 2003 and became law in 2004. After the incident that happened in Nova Scotia, the West Street mine explosion, killing 26 miners. So in 1992, so the law was named after the tragedy that happened in Westray. So the law added some sections, the criminal code to occupational health and safety, making the company executive more accountable when workers are killed or injured on their job as a result of management negligence. So we call that criminal negligence under occupational health and safety. So under the Westray law. So if somebody dies in an accident, before then we used to have different companies. They claim alibi. Sometimes they hide under the legal personality of the company. So because you cannot jail a company as a legal entity, although it's a person, right? So but now they've criminalized the OHS law to the extent that even the executives of the organization, if being investigated, they discover that the accident is as a result of negligence. Uh, of course, they'll be sued, they'll be charged, and they will serve, jail time, including fines, a huge fine. So read more about Bill C-45. I posted that on Blackboard. You can read more, including examples of different cases that. Okay, I think I cited one that happened in 2020.
Can I ask a quick
20.
question?
You have a question?
Just to, if a
Okay.
company, if executives at a company are being criminally charged,
Yeah.
you also said that there can be they can be sued. Now I know there's fines associated with with being criminally charged, but the suing and paying damage, because the fines go to the government. Correct me if I'm wrong, but the
Okay.
individual or the plaintiffs would have to sue them separately, or would that happen?
No. So what happened is this: in the case of accident, so the government will investigate. So if they find out that the root cause of the accident is as a result of negligence on the part of the leadership of the organization or the firm, of course, they will have to go through legal proceedings, all right, before they can be charged. All right. So that's why the word sue is coming from. The government is now taking charge, suing the company executives, all right, on behalf of public interests and public safety. So if you watch the Westray mine explosion, all right, let's even leave the Westray video. I remember the video we watched last week, the explosion of the railway, the magnetic rail derailed, the train that derailed, spilling crude, oil, and burning the whole downtown of that city. So the executive of the owner of the train, the operator, and I think one other guy, three of them were arrested and they were charged to court. You remember? Yeah. So, but then I think this law was still in process. So they were able to get away with some stuff, but even at that, the company had to claim bankruptcy because there was huge claim. Even the insurance had to no, we can't pay all of this. Almost 40 something million dollars. in liability. So the company had to file for bankruptcy. So now there's no escape route for executives of the company. Again, if they find out that the root cause of the accident is as a result of negligence. So let's take, for instance, did you know that the train was supposed to go for uh, a total overhaul and servicing, but because the owner think that yes, there's a business opportunity, we can't lose this amount of money, so they have to like quickly rush the servicing, which I think I wouldn't want to use the word fake parts, but substandard, parts. So just to fix it temporarily, then let's just go do business and we'll come back and do the right thing. So that is number one, negligence on the part of the owner. Two, the operator, instead of putting the handbrakes and of course the other brakes across different coaches, you only use the just apply the handbrake and kept the engine running. So there was negligence on the part of the operator, on the part of the owner of the train, and even the authority, the railway, the person in charge that was supposed to do some things. So I think those three guys were arrested. So it was negligence on their part as well, causing huge damage to the whole city, and people died. Almost 1,000 houses were burnt, and all of those things. So now, if somebody died in an accident, is a criminal case. It's no longer a case of occupational health and safety accident. There is a criminal side to it now. If they find out that the root cause is not maybe act of God, where we have natural disaster and all of those things. If it is as a result of negligence, then of course somebody is going to pay dearly for it.
I understand that there's going to be criminal charges, but
Okay.
Separately, do the victims have to pursue damages on their own in civil court? I guess is what I'm asking.
No. So everything comes under workers' compensation. So
okay.
For instance, depending on the okay, let's just use Ontario. In Ontario, we have workers' compensation. All right. So workers' compensation board will come in, which is necessary. It's very mandatory by every company to have that insurance policy. So once there's accident, they look at what happened, they investigate, and if it's lost, if there's any death, then they're going to involve the police. They're going to involve so the victim's family get paid. And of course, yeah, that is the essence of the insurance. Okay. So in the case of criminal case, apart from the damages, all right, or apart from the payments from the insurance company, the government we also swing in to ensure that, hey, what you've committed is severe. It's life that we're talking about here. Money cannot replace life. Even though we are paying the families big, huge amounts of money, it can't replace the value of life. So they want somebody, all right, to be held responsible for it. And that is where the executive comes in. So at all times, the executive have to make sure they prioritize safety as not just a culture, as a daily practice that everybody should be committed and adhere to all the time.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So there's new narrative to occupational health and safety more than what we used to know. It's really, really sensitive these days, and is it's something that every organization should take very seriously, very, very seriously. So okay, corporate liability for occupational health and safety under criminal code, we've mentioned that. Corporate liability for occupational health under criminal code, this legislation makes a company responsible for actions of those who oversee day-to-day operations. Okay, we mentioned that supervisors, mid-level managers, executives, if they confirm, they can commit All right, managers, executive, and operational who intentionally, please read this word, intentionally commit or have employee commits criminal or crimes to benefit the organization. Sometimes you might commit intentionally crime. Okay, a machine or equipment is not good, you are forcing them, just manage it. We need to make this money, and that leads to accident, killing the employee. So that is a crime. So manager who do not take action when they become aware of offenses being committed, the action of the manager would demonstrate criminal. Look at this, the action of managers who demonstrate a criminal lack of care under criminal negligence. All of these are part of criminal charges that can come up when investigated. So every company executive should be very careful on what they approve. And every time there's work refusal, please don't force people to work. Just go and fix it and ensure everything is working properly before you allow your workers to use it. So passing of Bill C-45 into law meant the following addition to criminal code under section 217 subsection 1. Those in authority for workers have a responsibility to take reasonable steps to protect those workers from harm. And also section 22 subsection 1 and subsection 2, corporations can be criminally liable for negligence and other offenses under this criminal code. So there have been several convictions, including large fines and prison sentences under this law. So I've shared things, cases under Westray law. Maybe I'll just read a few of those before we go on. Now let's quickly go to the concerns under environmental legislation. So there are parts of occupational health and safety that deals not with the industrial aspect, that deals with environment. So for instance, transportation of dangerous goods law intertwined also with Occupational Health and Safety Act. So practitioners need to be familiar with other legislations that are related. Okay, whether it's under consumer protection or environmental protection or Occupational Health and Safety Act. So, for instance, they cited an example here. If a release of hazardous substance occur within a non-residential building, it falls under the jurisdiction of the authority enforcing health and safety legislation. But if the release is outside of a building, it falls under the jurisdiction of the authority enforcing the environmental legislation. So both authorities also set, authorities on set of legislation may apply, where that is where we have the intersectionality that Marcassin asked the other time. So let's say, for instance, there is a spillage within a company. So that is health and safety legislation. All right, OSA, Occupational Health and Safety Act is involved. If the spillage, let's say, now spills from the company outside to residential area, then it's going to combine both industrial and environment. So both agencies will have to come together and ensure the protection of life and properties across their jurisdictions. So let's say, for instance, the California wildfire, that happened recently. So it's not just a case of health and safety jurisdiction. It involves both residential and industrial environment. So both parties will have to come together to ensure the quench the fire, to ensure people are safe, people are not killed with the wildfire. So that is where we have the intersectionality of authorities or agencies coming together to work, and to protect lives and properties of people um, within the society. All right. So they also mentioned environmental legislation, building awareness of the statute relevant to occupational health and safety act. So we have other laws that are also related to occupational health and safety acts. We have Canadian Environmental Protection Act, Hazardous Products Act, Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedom, which is part of our constitution, Canada Labour Code, Criminal Code of Canada, Pest Control Products Act, Transportation and Dangerous Goods Act, Radiation Emitting Devices Act, Canada Shipping Act, Radiation Protection Regulation. So all of these acts, practitioners are supposed to be aware and also make use, of those acts wherever it's applicable. So I want you to pay attention to Radiation Emitting Devices Act and Radiation Protection Regulation. So I want to show you something. All right. So I don't know if you can all see me. So can you see me? So this is my mobile phone. All right. So if you look at the back of the mobile phone, you'll see two stickers. Can you see the stickers?
We can see it, but it's fading out because of your
Okay. Okay. Don't worry. I
Oh,
will.
okay. I see
try.
two things there, but
Okay. Yeah, because of my background. So I don't know. Okay. 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 You know what? I'll put it just right on my chest. I believe you can. If it's on my chest, you'll be able to see it. All right. So if you see this and this, these stickers are working. It's just for me to sensitize you. So your mobile phones emit some kind of radiation. All right. So most of you are not aware of this sticker. It's called radiation blockage stickers. It's very cheap. It's on Amazon, about $9 or $10. So most of your devices, you should have something like this. All right, because all of these are devices. They are radiating some they are radiating or emitting some radiation. They emit radiation that are not at the high level, that is not too good for for our skin or for our health. Well, we are not really paying attention to that. Some people will even sleep very close with their phones and all of that. So please, you need to start getting sensitive to your health, including how your devices can harm you. So please, if you can get that sticker on Amazon, it's about $10, and it comes in about 5 or 6 pairs. So you can actually buy and share with your family members so that they can, also put it on their devices. Then what else? Transportation of dangerous goods, which is the last one that we're going to be looking at today. It's a law that guides how we move transport dangerous goods like propane, gas, flammable materials. So every company that is into transportation business, especially transportation of crude oil, propane, gas, all those things, they need to adhere strictly to these laws. So regulation of environmental hazards, occupational health and safety, and transportation of dangerous goods is not exclusive domain of the federal, provincial, or territorial government. Three of them can also come together to work, you know, to ensure goods are transported safely across cities, across municipalities, across provinces. So occupational health and safety professionals should also be familiar with all of these status within their jurisdiction. Environmental and transportation legislation seeks to supply the framework within which society can protect itself from the risk that attempts the transportation of inherent dangerous materials. So lastly, the federal law governing the transportation of dangerous goods apply to all persons who handles, offer for transport or import any dangerous goods. So ladies and gentlemen, I'm glad to inform you that we've come to the end of chapter 2. Uh, okay, yes, this was the last slide. Yes, correct. Exactly. All right. So, any question, Jacqueline? You have a question?
I was just gonna ask, on Blackboard, there's a Learning Journal 1. I was just wondering what that is.
Okay. Jacqueline, were you here last week?
Yes.
Okay, so perhaps you're not really paying attention. So, the Learning Journal 1 was part of our knowledge sharing exercise that we mentioned last week. It's not graded, but it's just for everybody to share their experiences and also learn from one another. The one that was graded or that will be graded is the forum discussion, which I also mentioned that you should also reply three of your colleagues' contribution. So the learning journal, you are not supposed to reply. It's just to post, on the platform for people to read, and you can also read, learn from others. Both are part of peer learning and collaborative learning exercises that are included in our learning for this online class. So I hope that is clear. So there's nothing to worry about. If you don't attempt it, it's not compulsory, it's not necessary. But the forum discussion is graded, it's 1% of the total grade. So focus should be more on the forum discussion than the learning journal. Okay, but both are okay. They are good for our learning. Any other question? So if there are no questions, I'm glad to inform. You have a question, Michael?
I just noticed earlier today on the critical path that you've got the summary of you've got a summary participation test, etc. Well, there's a test that says it's 15%, and I noticed I went and looked. I mean,
15% or 5%?
Check very well. Participation is 5, but then it goes test is 15, and the midterm is on the critical path dates and the final, but the test that you've got identified as 15% on the summary at the bottom is not on the dates. And I'm just wondering if that was.
Hold on. So the test. Hold on, I'm just trying to recall the critical part now.
Unless
the test is 5. The test 1. So maybe you are mixing it up. Test 1. All right. The quiz 1 supposed to be 5%. All right.
Okay.
5%. 5. All right. Today, the test 1 has just been released, and where is it?
I think I understand. There's 3 quizzes at 15%.
So it's 5%.
Yeah.
So it's not 50%. It's 5% for the test. I just opened it right now, and the good part is this: the quiz 1 or the test 1. I'm going to leave it is about 10 questions, and those questions are mostly multiple choice questions. We have a couple of questions that requires short essays. All right. So all in all, 5%, and it's not pro-taught, and we have you can do it within 60 minutes. So I'm extending it. It's supposed to be for 30 minutes, but because of people who have accommodation, request and approval, so I made it 1 hour for 10 questions. So you can do it anytime. You have online resources to support you at any time, anywhere within. So you have from today till next week, Sunday midnight. So you have 1 week to do it anytime you're comfortable. So just take, it shouldn't take me more than, if you're very fast, more than 10-15 minutes. That is for the fast students. But if you're very slow, maximum within 45 minutes you should finish. But I made it 1 hour for everybody to be able to pass the page. It's not pro-taught and it's not on responders. And you can always backtrack as well. You can go forward, backward, so there's no restrictions. So my advice is please accumulate as many points as possible. All right, these are good opportunities for you to pass, and I see no reason why anybody should fail this course. So, do we have any question? So if there's no question, I wish you guys a great one. Please remember to, I will also send a reminder though. So this, the recording of this class, I will also share it. Some of you weren't able to access it directly, so I posted it on YouTube as well. So if you're unable to access it directly on the link I'm going to post, I will also make an alternative on YouTube, so you can, for those of our students that are unable to come, meet our online class, they can always, rewatch again and also meet up with class activities. So I believe we have all learned something today. So I also want to, thank you very much for coming. I do not take you for granted. I know, busy schedules, work, families, and all of that. Thank you so much for joining, and I'll be looking forward to seeing you again next week. So if you have any question, please, you can always send me emails, and I'll reply you maximum within 48 hours. Within 48 hours, you'll get my response. So thank you very much, and have a good night, everyone. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Take
Have a
care.
good
Thank
night.
you. Have a good
Thank
night.
you so much. Good night, everyone.
Good night.